About changes, and we wanted to talk to you about the grading changes that are happening at Verona Area High School, especially in the English department for this school year. So let's start with the basics. So, how is a grade formulated? Well, the quarter and semester grades are determined by two main assessments. The very first assessment is a summative assessment. It is worth 80% of your final grade, so they're worth a lot. The second kind is the formative assessment. It is worth 20% of your final grade. Now, to distinguish between these two, the summative assessment is a final essay, a speech, a project, a test, a debate. These are generally just bigger assignments, more involved, and they often, but not always, occur at the end of a unit. The second kind of assessment is formative, and these are smaller daily assignments like reading journals, quizzes, daily homework, and comprehension checks. So let's talk about the change number one. You have 1 week to get in a summative assessment. So let's say we just got done reading our first novel, Speak, and you had a big essay due, and it is due on Friday, October 7th in this example. Well, you have 1 week to get in your summative assessment. So Friday, October 14th would be the hard deadline for you to turn it in. And this kind of grace period allows for students who are busy, they have work, or they have a sport that they're involved with, or they just want to refine their summative to make it as amazing as possible. Change number two, the process for turning in a late summative assessment. Let's say that it actually takes you longer than a week. You know, you're working on it or you forgot about it. Any summative assessment that is turned in more than 1 week late, you got to fill out two tasks. First and foremost, students need to fill out a self-reflection form. Each teacher sets this up differently, but just ask your teacher for the self-reflection form. The second is the student must meet with and talk to the teacher about what happened and why the assessment was turned in late. So we want to problem solve, and we can't problem solve unless we have a conversation. So if you look at the very bottom of this slide, your student is going to need to sign up to meet with your English teacher to have this conversation. And this happens during A+. An A+ is a time period set aside near lunches where students can get extra help or meet with their teacher. So in this example, Thursday would be the best day. It is an English instructional study hall for Mr. Hong, and you can just request and show up, and then you can have this conversation if your summative assessment turns in late. So to go back and to summarize, if your summative assessment is turned in past October 14th, okay, so that October 14th was kind of the hard deadline to turn it in. Let's say you turned it in on the 26th or the 19th. Then you need to complete these two steps in order for you to get credit for your summative assessment. Okay, so one thing to keep in mind, parents and guardians, is that if in Power School you see something called NHI, it is called not handed in. And it's often used by teachers to communicate to parents and guardians that an assignment was not turned in. And when an NHI code shows up in Power School, it automatically equates to a 50% grade. So we no longer give out zeros for not turning things in. So the NHI will compute into a grade. It'll just be worth 50%. All right, change number three. A student has 3 weeks for retakes on summative assessments. So student may be able to retake a summative assessment one time if they aren't happy with their initial grade. Students will have 3 weeks from the date the summative assessment is graded or handed back, and students can retake the summative assessment with their teacher during A+, or at the new testing center on the 3rd floor. So let's take an example here. Let's pretend that you got your essay back and it wasn't necessarily the grade that you wanted. So you got it back on Tuesday, November the 1st. Well, you have until Tuesday, November the 22nd to turn in your retake. And what I would recommend is that you show up to your teacher's A-plus sessions to talk about the assessment and to get some ideas on how to improve it. All right, change number 4. There are no retakes until all formatives have been completed. So a student with any missing formative assessments must complete all of them within the 3-week window and complete the redo in order to receive a redo grade. Now, why are we doing this? Well, we're doing this because last year we found that a lot of students were just skipping the formatives. They weren't doing them. And we were finding them that actually that doing these formatives is critical, absolutely critical to doing well on the summative. So we want to encourage your student to do these critical formatives if they want to do a retake. So here's an example on the screen. The student got a 75% or a C on a summative essay. But if you look, this student decided to skip over 3 formative assessments that would have been very helpful in terms of structuring and helping the student do well on the summative. The student just bypassed them. So in order for you to do a retake, you have to make up the 3 formatives that are currently listed as NHI. Okay, change number 5. Formative assessments have a clear due date. All formative assessments are due 1 week after a final summative assessment is due. Any formative assessment turned in after that deadline will be marked as NHI and scored at a 50%. So if you look at the sample example here, let's pretend that this is the student's Power School lookup. And if you see that basically there are 3 formatives that the student is missing. And so what we found last year was that students were trying to make up formatives from like months ago. And it was really difficult because the learning was really not fresh. And so we're trying to encourage students to make sure that if they are missing work, the final due date for all this formative work is 1 week after the final summative assessment. So here's an example. Let's say that we are doing a unit on civil rights and we have our final big summative assessment due on Friday, October 7th. Well, you have until Friday, October 14th to get all of your formatives turned in if you want credit for it. Now, unfortunately, if you turned it in after the 14th, it will be listed as NHI. So to go back to the example, this student has 3 formatives listed here on the screen that they have to make up by the 14th in order for them to get credit for it. If they turned it in after the 14th, unfortunately, the NHIs that are in the gradebook currently will stay in the gradebook. So I am hoping that this has been helpful for you. If you have individual questions for your English teacher, please reach out to us.